Hello, my name is Marta Miranda Johnson, and the topic chosen for my presentation is genetic engineering, the side effects on ecosystems and society. Bioengineering seems to be an important theme for ecology and humans because it involves the manipulation of natural food resources and other genetic matters that are necessary for human survival. It also provides agricultural advancement. It is controversial because it involves the environment, science, society, and politics. Some of the reasons of why I chose this topic and I'm passionate about it is because it's a type of technology that has enhanced our living by making food more productive and affordable. But at the same time, it is still unknown the future consequences of the use of this technique. Some possible issues would include the loss of biodiversity, organism resistance to herbicides, and all in all, it is important to preserve a healthy relationship between man and nature. Some of the main topics that are going to be discussed in this presentation are: what's the purpose of biotechnology? What is a GMO? Ethical issues related to the practice of human interference on the plant's DNA, and biodiversity loss and the main issues involving local organisms such as insects, pollinators, and pests. The purpose of biotechnology techniques, including GMO seeds. The purpose of biotechnology in agriculture and livestock is to bring benefits to humankind through the following. Um, the ones that are presented in the slide, but in specific, the ones that are highlighted. For example, the durability increase of food, we have tomato as an example, and the creation of transgenic plants that are resistant to herbicides. Transgenic seeds are thought to be an enhanced version of the original seed because they are more resistant to pests and more productive. GMO is thought to be the method for solving worldwide hunger due to the high yield crops it produces. What is a GMO? Let's talk about human interference background in the plants and in the environment and the new types of GMOs. The practice of crossbreeding has been used for farmers for thousands of years already, where you'd use the most productive hybrids to create the best crops. Humans have had great influence over the foods we have available today. However, biotechnology does not use the traditional crossbreeding methods. Traditional breeding method selects the plant with the most favorable traits to be replanted. Another traditional method is cross-pollination, where the plants need to be compatible for it to be successful. But transgenic organisms, on the other hand, are created by inserting genetic material from one organism to the DNA of a completely unrelated organism, even a non-plant species, which would not happen in nature naturally. One example would be the DNA of a fish into a tomato, for example, or DNA of a fish into a strawberry. So these organisms are not directly related. They are not from the same species. Next topic is ethical issues related to the practice of human interference in the plant's DNA. Some of the issues we have are related to how genes could mutate and have harmful effect because we don't know if human interference in the manipulation of the genes would influence the gene into destabilization or mutation, if they would remain the same in case of mutation. Genes can end up in unexpected places. Through gene escape, they can pass into other members of the same species and perhaps other species too. Transfer of allergenic genes. Genes could be accidentally transferred to another species, causing dangerous reactions in people with allergies. And the other issue is related to intellectual property rights that could slow research. So the proprietary nature of biotechnology projects and processes may prevent the access for public sector research since they own the patent. And some socioeconomic issues would be related to loss of farmers' access to plant material. Biotechnology research is carried out predominantly by the private sector, and there are concerns about market dominance in the agricultural sector by a few powerful companies. Biodiversity loss. The effects on environment are a particular concern with regard of GMO crops and food production. One of the concerns is regarding herbicides, as unintended hybrid strains of weeds and other plants can develop resistance to these herbicides through cross-pollination, for example. Thus, that would be negating the potential benefit of the herbicide. And one of the concerns are also about the effects on untargeted species. For example, the adverse effects on monarch butterfly populations, which are not the original target of the pesticide. Although the pesticide can protect crops against unwanted insects, they can also have unintentional effects on neutral or even beneficial species. So there was a study conducted with bees because it was conducted with bees because they are specialized in particular nesting sites, which makes them sensitive to changing habitat conditions. So in this study, they concluded that there are direct and indirect effects of study. We have the direct toxic effects and the indirect agroecosystem effects. In the direct toxic effects, we have the bees being affected by the toxicity of proteins expressed by the inserted gene on bees, and this caused them to have a modified behavior. And in the indirect agroecosystem effects, we have the effects on quality or attractiveness of foraging plants by altering the phenotype or physiology of the plant. And we also have decreased weed abundance in and around the GM fields. The study concluded that it needs to have more sampling and it's necessary to evaluate the impacts of GMOs on bees, but that would take many years to have a good amount of samples so they could come up with a conclusion about the interference of GMOs in the pollination process. A study conducted by 5 universities analyzed GMO efficiency compared to other local breeds of seeds. In the study was investigated identification and isolation of a desired gene and transfer into another genome, the transfer of the chosen trait into a selected commercial line of maize or variety of soybean, and trials for adaptation and seed multiplication to obtain commercial projects for sale to farmers. The study concluded that it's costly to monitor information management involving the cycle of transgenic characteristics, and also the GMO benefits are short-term because the seeds in the GMO processes do not proceed like nature sharing information. So here's one quote from the conclusion of the study. It says, "New patterns and new uses of GMO tools for agricultural commodities should be those that can take advantage of existing information in nature because they are stable." So we know the process, the natural process in nature, but we don't know the modified ones, the ones which uses our technology. How would they be advantageous in years to come? Action steps proposed towards a solution. A proposed action would be to have more funding towards independent research, since the technology used is new, from 1970s to present. It's not enough time to evaluate the real risks of GMO. Plus, more regulation towards the cultivation of monocultures, the GMO ones, to preserve local and natural crops. So it is important to have boundaries between monoculture, crops that are monoculture, and the different natural types. And here are all the references used in this presentation. Thanks for watching.